Sorry for the delay. My name is Aunindra. I currently lead the design team for Indeed in India. Uh, it's a cross-functional discipline that I manage, which is of designers, researchers, and content designers. It's a unique role because then I could see the amalgamation between design and research coming together, and of course, content plays a key role of it. So today I'm going to talk about advocating evaluative research for actionable design decisions. Before we start, there is something, a small video that I just wanted to play. Uh, all right, probably. Can you put it full screen mode? I'll put this one. Can you pull up full screen mode? Zian, you can skip this one. Let's move. Yeah. All right. So just a quote from Nielsen to start with. Nielsen Norman Group does say that usability testing can lead to 300% improvement in user experience and engagement and retention when done in the development process, and that to early stages itself. So that's one of the most powerful things that we need to understand, that as a product company or as a services company, we need to understand that there are two pieces of it. One is discovery and the other is delivery. While we all focus a lot on strategic research, we all do a lot of foundational research, but at times we do not focus on something that is equally critical, which is the whole notion of evaluative research as such. Moving to the next one, the goal of today's presentation is to help understand how evaluative research plays a pivotal role in creating product that truly meets user needs, why continuous feedback should be embedded throughout the product lifecycle altogether, and why making actionable design decisions is critical to the success of the entire product. So moving to the next one, why? So let's start with evaluating. The evaluative research is crucial in the product development process. So I know people understand evaluative research, I'll not take much of your time, but just highlighting few things, that evaluative research focuses on accessing how effectively a design or a feature meets user needs, pain points, and their expectations. It fundamentally focuses on the usability and the effectiveness of a product from user's perspective. There are various methods that we end up using every now and then. But to summarize, there are two different stages at which we use evaluative research. One is the formative evaluation, something that we do when the design, something that we do during the design process to refine the concept and improve the product iterations as well before it gets live or before it gets implemented. The second is a summative one, wherein we do after the launch to measure the product overall effectiveness and impact on the users as such. So with that thing in mind, the role of evaluative research in product development comes into one big piece. So we all know that design as a function itself, we feel that we know the problem well enough to be able to solve for that problem and create a solution that's going to be compelling. But at the end of the day, every designer needs to understand that they are not the actual user of the product. And that's where the disconnect happens. And this is the reason why we call this discipline as a user-centered design and not a design-centered experiences altogether. So the user feedback ensures that design aligns with the actual user needs, making the product more intuitive and relevant. The other aspect of the evaluative research is that it helps risk in terms of risk mitigations. The early research uncovers a lot of issues which could be very costly to the product, right from the delay to user satisfactions to losing customers, and the time to market also gets impacted in a critical way. So that's where the two aspects of why we need evaluative research is mainly to ensure that we have a user-centered design as well as the risk mitigation is sorted. It also goes about the criticality in terms of if we were to categorize how this actually helps in day-to-day work. So one is it reduces risk, as I highlighted. It surfaces those flaws early on. The second is it improves usability, which is what is most critical piece in terms of making the product intuitive as well as user-friendly. The third is it increases user satisfaction in the product with regard to making sure that we either meet or exceed user expectations, and we would ensure that there is a fostering larger customer loyalty to the product that's maintained. And the last is it also helps in terms of supporting iterations. We do not make product once and leave it. It has to be a continuous cycle. And for that to happen, you need those continuous rhythm of feedback to iterate on the product and ensure what is the next improvements that you are going to make. So having said that, while we all know why the evaluative research is important, but with the current landscape, there are a lot of issues in terms of prioritizing those evaluative research. Some of it is known for quite some time. Some of it is also with the changing in the market dynamics, wherein there's a cost optimization, there is a constant change in priority of the product features, there's a constant change in the leadership as well. But I would want to summarize some of the key reasons why there's a gap and why some of those evaluative research are often overlooked in the industry. The first one being the time and resource constraint, which is quite critical. Product teams are often under tight deadlines and limited budgets, and budget is all in terms of the manpowers as well as in terms of the infrastructure and additional budgets as well. This makes it difficult to allocate sufficient time and resources for user research and testing. And there's a larger emphasis on that because this is one of the key reasons why many a times those evaluative research are deprioritized. While we do spend a lot of time in terms of product strategy, we spend a lot of time in terms of product vision, roadmap, and then when it comes to actually translating those strategy in actual product development, we want that development cycle to be shortened enough to be able to make it to the market much faster. And the first thing that gets compromised is the additional need of evaluating those concepts and iterations as such. So that's the first one. The second is lack of understanding and value. Some teams may or might not fully recognize the importance of testing those features in and out, or they feel that research is kind of unnecessary as they know the problem well enough and they also know the solutions to the problem. So that's another piece that I wanted to highlight. The third, which is quite up there, is misalignment across the teams. Designers, product managers, engineers, these are some of the core people who are the core part of the product development. Not to say that sales and marketing team doesn't play a key role, but even within these core functions, there's a larger disconnect and different in perspective on the role of user feedback. And sometimes these leads to a disconnect in prioritizing as well as implementing those research effectively. So one is people do not understand the value that this evaluative research brings to the table, or if they have those research, they do not understand how to prioritize those insights and how to kind of implement those or iterate designs on based of those insights as such. The other one to highlight is the securing stakeholders' buy-in. The stakeholders are much more critical in today's landscape with all the changing dynamics that I highlighted. And we need to constantly ensure that as a UX function, we have those stakeholders buy-in in terms of doing the right process and having the right tools to be able to deliver a compelling solutions. Evaluative research becomes one critical aspect of it. So convincing the decision makers on the long-term value of investing in research can be very challenging. Specifically, they may be interested in doing strategic or the foundational research, but that is not always the case with the evaluative research as such. And more so when we are in the market, when the short to mid-term product releases and priorities are critical, these are often overlooked in general. The other aspect is lack of expertise. Research requires specialized skills in both conducting studies as well as analyzing those data, which many teams lack in the current landscape, and that hinders the effectiveness of those research. So research is not something that you just kind of deliver. You have to stick with those research. You have to influence the product time and again. You have to make sure that the research insight is valued enough in any of those product decisions, and that's where the expertise doesn't only lie with conducting research, but in terms of influencing those research much more in today's world. So that's another aspect that I wanted to highlight. And the last thing is misunderstanding of the research applications. So even when research is conducted, some teams struggle to actually integrate those findings into actionable design decisions. There are times when the designers are clueless. Of course, this is a great insight, but what do I do? What is the actionable recommendations that I could iterate my design with? So that's important. So because of those reasons, either those research insights are overlooked or they are underused as well. So these are some of the key barriers that I wanted to highlight in terms of incorporating research into the product development. Moving ahead, I also wanted to talk how we can advocate for continuous user feedback in the entire product development. Because even within the product or even within the UX function, things are often siloed. So there is a design team and there's a research team. While they have a different charter, they would still want to make sure that they are cross-advocating for the need of research, and it's not only on the research functions to always advocate things as well. So the reason for us to have those advocacies for two big things: product is always going to evolve. So product development is always iterative. It doesn't end with the launch itself, that we have delivered a product and we are sorted. We need to have a continuous feedback is crucial for the ongoing improvements as well as the adapting to the product over the period of time. So that's one thing that we need to learn and understand. The second thing is, while we would have done those foundational research to understand user needs, but the user needs also constantly shift with time. AI has been one of the key players or key impact reasons for shifting those user needs as well. And so is the user's preferences in day-to-day life. So as a product grows, so does the user expectation grows over the period of time as well. And regular feedback ensures that the teams stay aligned and these evolving needs are also maintained and addressed in terms of their relevance and needs as such. So that's another bit that we need to understand. Coming on to how do we go about creating that culture? So building a feedback culture is critical, and unless until we do it more often, we'll not be able to succeed. So what I wanted to categorize was into three key areas. So there is a need in terms of the pre-launch of the product itself, wherein we can conduct those early concept validations and prioritize those feedback and iterate on the design. The second is during the actual launch, when we have this, either we go with a limited launch to the alpha or the beta customers, and these users provide us those direct feedback which we can iterate before we go for a larger release. And the third is post large scale or post a general availability launch, wherein we need to continuously monitor the feedback through surveys, usability testing, user feedback, and all of it. So these are the three key stages of the entire launch of the product, wherein we need to understand and ensure that there's a rhythm of continuous feedback altogether. But how do we turn this insight into action? That's one of the key things that I find more often that we tend to miss in our day-to-day world. So the first is in terms of feature prioritization. So once you have those key research insights into place, you need to act to be able to get into the product. And this is not only a researcher's art or their job, but it's also a designer's job to kind of make sure those insights are turned into actions, and they work with rest of the stakeholders to kind of do it every single time that they have some critical insights on the table. So the first is in terms of feature prioritization. Use user feedback to decide which features or design changes should take a precedence. Not everything could be done, but as long as you know the criticality or the severity of those feedback and how it impacts the success of the product or the feature, you need to help prioritize. Of course, all of us would want every single insights to be implemented, but that's not practical, and that's where the feature prioritization becomes a key in terms of our success. The second is usability refinements. We need to address pain points and improve user workflows based on these insights on a regular basis. And the third is guiding iterations. We need to shape the product updates by using research to inform design decisions and also prioritize those improvements during the regular stream of product planning as such. So this is how we can translate those research insights into actual actions. Coming to the other part of the presentation, wherein I wanted to share some of the strategies that has worked for us at Indeed in India, wherein we were able to integrate evaluative research in the actual product life cycle. So some of the things that worked was, when I started building the team in India, we had just one designer. We ended up hiring not only the designers, but also the researchers. And so I had the chance to establish the entire research function, but most of the time when we used to go and do the research backlog, it was mainly the generative research which was always enticing, that could always help the product in terms of knowing and building their strategy. So even when people used to surface those evaluative research, it used to take a backseat. So what we ended up changing was that we wanted to use different tactics and strategy to be able to do those right set of evaluative research to be able to deliver what we wanted to. So the first thing was, we started small to kind of win the trust of the stakeholders on the need of this evaluative research. So this is where you can do a lightweight usability testing. You can use usertesting.com to also kind of get those early feedback, because those are also faster and kind of help people understand what's working, what's not working in the actual product. When you start doing it more often, people understand the value that you are surfacing on the product gap or the design gap in terms of the value that we are shipping. The second is educating stakeholders. Help them understand the return of investment on evaluative research through case studies or metrics. Be sticky, point things out, highlight the issues which saved the kind of bad user scenarios in general as well. So educating stakeholders is critical. The stakeholders' participation, while we had seen in the long run that people are involved in terms of the strategic research, they would definitely come and observe those user sessions as well, but there was a lesser participation in the evaluative research. So we wanted to make sure that most of the stakeholders at least observe a couple of sessions when the actual user testing is happening on the ground. So that was mainly to help them empathize and understand firsthand issues that is being surfaced, and not through the user research report later. And the last stage is in terms of iterative approach. Emphasize on the value of continuous testing and learning. So you start small, but you build incrementally and have it slowly and steadily embedded into the entire process. So this is the core strategy that we ended up working. And in terms of just summarizing what I said earlier, this is how we can create a feedback loop. We can have a cycle wherein we collect data, we analyze those data, implement and test. So the emphasis has to be on the importance of feedback loop and how they enable constant iterations and product improvements. So that's one key area that we need to work. The second is, as I said earlier, making feedback actionable is critical. So discuss the importance of synthesis, aggregating data into insights that can be acted upon is important. And the third is, set the cross-functional team for research. We need to ensure that how the research, design, and product teams should work together to ensure research findings are implemented is equally critical. We also did few workshops with all the stakeholders as a part of the product planning itself, taking clues from some of those insights and helping them understand if we are not iterating it, it's going to be a jarring experience altogether. So those actual working sessions and taking things from those research are quite critical in general. So while this was all theory, I just wanted to share one recent example from the product that we were building in India. So Indeed, as you know, is a #1 jobs platform in the world. We have almost 350 million unique visitors coming every single month. But in India, we have been trying to kind of make inroads in the Indian market. We know they are big players. And we also wanted to solve this entire the black hole problem between the job seeker and employer. We wanted to make sure that there's a marketplace wherein the job seeker and employers are shaking hands on a regular basis. So it shouldn't happen that the job seeker applies for a role and then there's no clue what happens to the application. So there's a larger research that we have been doing to understand both the employer perspective as well as job seeker's perspective and bring the two things together. When we did that, we also realized that we have a job seeker experiences where the job seekers are expected to create their own resume, because that is how, once you create your resume or you upload your resume, you are represented with that resume to the actual employer who are scouting for talent through Indeed as a platform. So having said that, there was an existing product that was working well in US, and we thought this is going to work well in India as well. We started doing some foundational research. This is the actual product experience that was there a few months back. And we realized that there are significant gaps in the experiences, because in India, the resumes are much more deeper and sharper, and also the resume differs from industry to industry. So how somebody would go about creating a resume in a tech segment would be very different in a BPO or other segment as such. So we realized that it has to be a market-specific, segment-aware resume funnel that we need to create to be able to succeed. And we also learned that people spend months and months to create those resumes. It's not a one-cycle job. In fact, the other thing that we learned was people have multiple resumes, and they would tweak their resumes based on the role that they apply. So with those insights that we did, we ended up creating a concept. This is just a portion of the concept that was much, much, much better than what was there in the US market. While we all wanted to build this entire experience in India, but then the unexpected thing that happened was that we realized that we have to go to the market faster than what you would have expected it to be. Plus, there was a reduction in force. We had lesser capacity from the engineering, because the organization as a whole wanted to optimize the number of products and contributions that they're doing. So with all of that, we had to kind of park this product all together, and engineering team picked those nuances of what needs to be added to the product experiences, and they just built those capabilities in the existing funnel, and they shipped. The UX team was all in concern that this is not going to work. We did some sort of end-to-end audit as well to highlight those informations, but people were like, no, this is going to work. There are some early decent feedback as well. Come few months back, we realized that the funnel experience is broken. There are a lot of people who are not getting past the half of the funnel experiences as well, because the way we added those incremental features was a jarring experience. Those analytics data were helping us understand the drop where it is happening, but it was not helping us understand why that drop is happening and what needs to be done to kind of improve upon those funnel experiences. And that's the reason, that's the place when we wanted to kind of go back and do a large scale evaluative research. While most of the researchers were busy in my team in terms of doing the generic strategic research, we partnered with UCC and got their help to kind of make sure that they end up working with us and doing evaluative research. And when we started doing it, we did put the entire framework in terms of what is the core problem that we are trying to solve out here through this research. What is the key objective? What is the key methods that we would want to kind of use, and why? And this was the initial thing. We ended up having a very clear picture in terms of research intake, worked with the stakeholders, made sure that they are partnering on the needs and the goals of this evaluative research, and they started kicking on those research itself. When we started doing those early workshops with the UCC team, we also wanted to understand who are the actual segments and who are the actual users for whom we are going to test this product. While initially the product team thought that it's one common user base, which is anybody who's a job seeker. But during when we went back to the previous research data, we realized that there are two core user set. One is mainly the first-time job seeker. The second is the experienced job seeker. And the way they would interact in terms of building those resume on the platform differs a lot. And to add on to that, it also differs largely when you have to look at from the segment or the market perspective. So the way somebody working in the service industry or the call center executive would create their resume would be very different than the tech segment itself. So we went on to that. I just have few slides picked up from those, and we started understanding the resume creation from diverse user or the job seeker itself. So there's something on the first-time job seeker, what are their preferences, needs, and the issues that they're surfacing and seeing on this entire product that we had in the market. And then the second was from the experienced professional in terms of the gaps that they were highlighting time and again. The other thing was, as I said, these are just representative slides, but we also started curating things around the experienced professionals in terms of what are the key aspect or their understanding on the resume creation process as such. So these were the key takeaways that we had from those experienced professionals in general. They were the way they would go about creating resumes, and the content was something that we also learned through this research as such. So it was not only tied to usability, but we also wanted to use this entire evaluative research to understand their perspective on creating those resume experiences as such. So and the quotes are always powerful to connect with the stakeholders in terms of understanding what's working and what's not working. The second is we also wanted to prioritize, because of course we can have a lot of learnings, but if you do not summarize what are the key takeaways from this research, it's just not going to help. So we had those actual understanding from the experienced job seeker and the first-time job seekers prioritized in those clear areas in terms of how they go about creating those resumes. Some of it being having a professional structure and content, having a networking and feedback. So there are a bunch of things that they highlighted, which we also learned and shared with the team as such. And on the same lines, I also wanted to kind of give a sneak peek in terms of how those recommendations were much more sharper. It was something that it didn't just had as an insight, but it also ensured that those are actionable for the product and design teams to kind of iterate on things. So these were some of the insights that we had. And then this is how the team actually captured each and every workflow in the entire product and created those areas and the feedback and the issues as well. So unless until you make your presentations and a structure and synthesis sharper enough, you'll not see the traction. So that's one thing that we have at Indeed. While whether we do it by ourselves or we work with agencies, we make sure that those research land the way it has to be in terms of having a larger connect with all stakeholders. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to share. Quick recap. We all need to understand the importance of evaluative research in the entire product development lifecycle. We need to also understand and empathize on the barriers, as well as how do we overcome those in the current systems rather than just living with those. And we need to help create the continuous feedback rhythm. So that's mainly my presentation. I had one small video which I couldn't play, sorry for that. That was mainly about people across different ages using slides, and those slides were very innovative. We all have used slides in general as well, but when people started using those slides, people were either frightened or people had those issues in terms of unexpected issues in terms of how the slide would behave and all. So what we were trying to understand is it's not only tied to the software. It's like any place that you go and use, testing your product, whether it's a product or a service is critical, and that is what will help us succeed. So that's mainly my presentation, the research that we had. I know Salaka and Sipra, thanks to both of you for working on this. But we ended up taking those research insights, working and conducting those workshops with the product, and ensure that there's a clear charter and the roadmap for the next quarter to iterate and improve upon on the overall resume creation process on the Indeed as a platform in India. So yeah, that's mainly from my side. Thank you. Upload options, because if you have a resume, you can definitely upload, and we'll be able to parse those data and make sure that we extract those in the right relevant form to be able to surface it as a profile to the employer. The second thing that we realized was on the platform itself, it has to be platform agnostic. Not everybody is used to creating those resumes on mobile device. A lot of tech people would want to create it on the desktop experiences as well, because you have so many references. You would want to kind of, even when it comes to writing those summary aspect of it, you'll iterate multiple times, and typing on the mobile device while creating resume is not that easy as well. So, but there were other segment of users who would prefer doing it on the fly and on the mobile device as well. The third was, there were segments wherein people said that I don't want my resume to be templatized. It is a unique proposition. Specifically, that was something that came out from the college freshers, that came out from people in certain industries as well, that also came out from designers and researchers, because they want their resume to be unique when presented to the actual employer. So that's where creating those templatization is little restrictive. But what we wanted to do is have a iterative way of building or creating that right resume experience. So start creating those templates, make sure that it encompasses all the things that a job seeker would want to enter, make sure that it's not only market specific, but it's segment aware resume experiences as well. And then once we have a core based product established, then we go little tangential and start to explore different techniques in terms of making sure that you can actually make it very, very distinct and unique as such. In fact, one of the things that I just wanted to share was we had an AI highlighter. So we had an AI integrated into the entire resume product. And when we did generative research, people were concerned with AI. They said, your AI is going to give more or less very similar prompt to all the job seeker. And rather than making it unique, it's going to make it more of a standardized and templatized kind of format. And that's something it's going to be jarring. So they were learnings that we have constantly seen and we are iterating. So this is where the user needs are also evolving and shaping and changing. And that's where if we do not keep up with pace and iterate, we'll just not be able to succeed. Yeah. So this was a video that I just wanted to share. So this is one thing uh, of a product wherein it's a simple slide. You never expected this to happen while you were sliding things. This is like another fun, but it's scary as well, life-threatening. And this is when everybody comes at the same time. And you get stuck midway. You get hurt. So this is where this is those standard product wherein innovation is important, critical, but the innovation comes with its own cost, and if you're not testing those product with the actual users, we'll just not succeed. So that was the thing.
Um, Excuse me. I had one question, if there is some time. I wanted to ask you, what were the challenges you faced initially when you said that you had only one designer and you wanted to have research? Now, generative research, as you know, is like time-taking. So how did you convince your internal stakeholders, like, hey, we need generative research and we are going to do it, and how did you propose for that?
So thank you for that question. It was not easy to work in a product setup where we had a lot of product managers and engineering manager. When I joined that team, as I said, 3 years back, it was just one designer. And I somehow felt that designers actually working in the agency mode, taking taking those product initiatives and translating it into design without knowing why and what needs to be done and why it needs to be done and why it needs to be built in a certain way itself. So I started surfacing some of those basic heuristics and gap analysis with the product. And that was something that I encouraged the designers to do it. We also had a global license on usability testing, usertesting.com. So we tried creating some of those user testing insights and test those features and started socializing the gap with the stakeholders in terms of knowing that unless until we know the core problem well enough. So we had those market data, but we didn't have those core user needs and pain points and the expectations with regard to the experience on the job seeker as well as employer side. And there was a larger gap in terms of how the two distinct set of users would come on the platform all together. So it was not an easy task. Building those case studies, highlighting the gaps in the design, building a story around how things are not working in the product and surfacing those with the stakeholders was something that we started. And we did one research. We never went with a large scale proposal. We wanted to ensure that there's one small research, even if it is tiny, help people understand the value of it and then move along. So that's the journey. So right now we almost had 4 researchers in the team. We have a research operations person as well. We have almost 4 to 5 designers, 1 content designer, and then we also work with agencies like UCC in general as well. So yeah, that's the journey.
Thank you so much.